Our guest today is Abdulrahman, a young American converted to Islam in an early age. Let us hear his story.
I was born into a Christian family, but we weren't very practicing. We would go to church just a few times a year for Christmas and Easter and the holidays. And God only existed on Sunday in church in my family and not outside the church. And many American families are like this. I've always been a very logical thinker. And when I was about 11 or 12 years old and I started thinking for myself, I asked myself, does God exist? And this question I felt was pushed on me by a clash between science and religion, or rationality and religion in America. And I think that tradition goes back to the Christian church in Europe. And there were always issues between the Catholic Church and science and advancement. And when I compared what I saw in the Bible and what I knew of the Trinity and the other Christian beliefs compared to science and evolution and evidence, I leaned towards the side of science, and I chose not to believe in God.
Abdulrahman came to Jordan in a scholarship to study Arabic language with a group of other students. Among them is Jalal, who lives with Abdulrahman in the same apartment.
My first exposure to Islam was when my friend in high school became Muslim. And he's also my neighbor, Michael Dan. And when Michael became Muslim, he changed a lot. Before Islam, he was doing a lot of things that were messing his life up, and he was really going down the wrong path. And he became Muslim, and when he was only 15, and he changed, and he left a lot of the things he was doing, he picked up a lot of good habits. And I asked him, what forced you to change? What made you change and become like this? And he explained that he's Muslim now. And at that time, this was before September 11th, people in America really didn't know a lot about Islam, and even today they don't know a lot. And I asked him, what is Islam? Who are Muslims? And he explained to me about Muslims, and I was surprised that Islam is very close to Christianity and Judaism. And it made a lot of sense to me that there's one God and there's prophets and messengers, but none of the prophets have divinity. Rather, they're just sent by God and they're humans like us. And I didn't really want to become Muslim at that time, but it just made sense to me logically. After a while, I read a book called The Autobiography of Malcolm X. And in that book, I really appreciated the image that Malcolm X presented of Muslims, and I wanted to become Muslim after that, because I saw in Islam a solution to racism and a lot of other problems in America. But I didn't believe in God. However, I read a passage where Malcolm X said, if you take one step towards God, he takes two towards you. So I left eating pork, and I left some of the things that are prohibited in Islam with the intention that God guide me. And I learned more and more about Islam, and I was surprised that the more I asked questions, the more answers I found, and the answers always made sense to me. And I read about the miracles of the Quran, scientific miracles of the Quran. And they're many.
I got to know Abdulrahman through a program funded by the State Department called the Critical Language Scholarship, in which we spent 2 months studying in an Arabic country, and it happens to be Amman, Jordan this year. And so this is where I got to know Abdulrahman first. I actually first met him at an orientation that we had in Washington, D.C. Several things that I think are very special about Abdulrahman was that, number one, he converted to Islam, but he converted with a knowledge of Islam. He's not a convert that doesn't know anything about Islam. He's one that's serious about studying Arabic. He recites the Quran on a regular basis. I always see him reciting the Quran before class. Usually in his free time, he'll be reciting the Quran. He does it very serious about how he pronounces the words, how he speaks, how he engages with everyone else. One thing I did also notice is that a lot of students are very interested about learning about Islam. They're interested to know, and then to know about Islam, and Abdulrahman is able to engage in a lot of dialogue. And so obviously Islam is a very important issue, especially among American students, and Abdulrahman, more so than I've seen many people, even many Muslims in the States, he's openly willing to engage in conversation. He's open if someone has a question about.
We are now with Abdulrahman in Aker Center, where he takes intensive courses in Arabic language.
I'd like to add that Islam is the most beautiful thing in my life and the source of all goodness. It's a message that every soul finds tranquility with, and a sense of purpose and fulfillment and true happiness. And I encourage everyone to take a step towards God, and they'll find that God takes 2 steps towards them. Because this is a light from Allah. And any way you look at the light, it comes out to be true. And so if you ask questions and you prefer to look at it from science or from your soul or from people, go whichever way you want, and I'm sure that you will find that this is the message you've always been looking for.